is turning around. It's possible
Immaginate la PlayStation e quando
everything
hai lo tavolino.
split second.
Vabbè, ma io 12
If you
minuti
figure
sono
that
passati,
it takes
Magari
half
mo
a
stanno
second to
facendo...
turn, that's 4
No, stanno
gigabytes
facendo
of
cose
data you
più...
can load. That sounds
più
normal
normali
for
ancora.
next gen.
Ah,
Iniziano i video
Back to the
seri.
hard drive. Another strategy for
immaginati
effective
la PlayStation e
read
poi da
speed is
sotto
to make
l'usano
big
di
chunks of data. For example, we might group all the data
giganti,
together
quanto
into
ne
a
frigo.
That removes most of the seeks, and the streaming gets faster. But there's a downside too, which is that frequently used data is included in many chunks and therefore is on the hard drive many, many times. Marvel's Spider-Man uses this strategy, and though it works very well for increasing the
Vabbè, che a noi
streaming
non capivano un cazzo.
there's a
comunque.
massive
Tipo di
duplication as a
specifiche
result.
cose.
Some of the
Magari
objects
sta
like
dicendo cose
mailboxes
serie.
or news
Però
racks are
quanti
on
io,
the hard
questi
drive
cristiani che li vendi,
400
quanti mi
times.
capiscono.
No,
What I'm describing here
No,
are
vabbè, ma
things
spero
that
qualche
cramp
trailer,
a
qualche cosa lo
creative
faccio
director's
vedere.
style.
Almeno...
Teniamo a
Either
mano
level
tutti
design gets a
pare.
little bit boring in places, or the data is duplicated
so.
so many
Questo è il
times
vizio,
it no
sempre.
longer fits on
Sì,
the Blu-ray
sì.
disc. And you
Con le
end
chiavi della
up
macchina.
hard limits on the player's run speed or driving speed. The
Original
player can't go
file.
faster than the load speed from the hard drive. And finally, I'm sure many of you have noticed that after a patch download, the PlayStation 4 will
Quella
take
che
a long
quella
time
che
to
sta
install. the patch.
tipo poco povera.
That's because when just part of a file has been changed, the new data can be downloaded pretty quickly. But before the game boots up, a brand new file has to be constructed
Beh,
that
questa
includes the changed
comunque mi
portion.
sembra più una cosa...
Otherwise, every change would add
Cazzo ne
a
so.
seek or two.
Vabbè dai,
Even
sicuramente
so,
qualche
you
video di
can
gioco lo fanno vedere.
occasionally see
Xbox e
this
fa fatto
happening
vedere
on
quel
game
gioco,
titles.
dai.
They start
Sì,
to
però
hitch once they get patched.
Xbox quando l'ha fatta era
With an
una
SSD,
conferenza.
no seeks. So no need to push brand new
Per questo ci credi al documentario.
which means no
Dove ti chiamano
install
The
as
Road
you know them today.
PS5, tipo ne fanno
Sì.
30 fino a quando
There's
esci,
yet
quindi
one
questo è
more
soltanto
benefit.
per
Cioè, questa non è una
System memory
conferenza,
being
capito?
used much
Alla
more.
lontana proprio l'hanno presa col
On
titolo.
PlayStation 4,
Perché le
game
conferenze
data
le
on the hard drive
fanno
feels very distant
ai
and
cosi,
difficult
come si
to
chiamano?
use.
Alle
By the
3,
time
a
you
queste
realize
cose
you
qua.
need a piece of data, it's
Tipo
much too late
l'Xbox
to
l'ha
go out
fatta
and
dei
load.
Game
So
Award,
system
no?
memory has to contain all of the data that could
Quindi
be used
penso che
in the
questa
next
qua sia
30
più una cosa
seconds
tipo
or
di
so
una
of gameplay.
presentazione.
That means a lot of the 8
Vabbè, non
gigabytes
vino,
of
questo
system
è
memory
idea,
is idle. It's just waiting
Tanto
there
ormai stiamo
to
qua,
be potentially used.
No, ma secondo me
On
qualcosa di...
PlayStation
Ah,
5, though, the
ma già
SSD
si fanno
is
vedere
very
il
close to
design
being like more
e
RAM.
assai,
Typically, it's fast enough that when you realize you need a piece of
Vabbè, noi
data,
Guido si
you can
aspettava.
just load it from the
infatti.
SSD.
Perché
and use it.
l'Xbox...
There's no need to have lots of data parked in system memory waiting to potentially
RAM
be
da
used.
16 giga.
A different way of saying that is that
sì.
most of RAM is working on the game's
vecchia
behalf.
GDDR8.
This is one of the reasons that 16 gigabytes of GDDR6
Pensi
feels
della
right for
PlayStation,
PlayStation 5. The presence of the SSD
No,
reduces the
aspetta, mi
need
sa
for a
PlayStation 4 c'è la
massive
5,
intergenerational
Xbox
increase
One
in
c'è la
size.
4.
So, back to the dream of the
Fast boot,
SSD. Here's
not
the set of
load
targets.
screen.
Boot the game in a second.
Tutto.
No load screens.
Duplicate game data.
Design freedom, meaning no twisty passages or long corridors. More game on the disk and more game on the SSD. And finally, those patch installs go away.
Allora, ultra fast
The
boot,
reality,
non
though,
so.
is that the SSD is just one piece of the puzzle. There's a lot of places where bottlenecks can occur in between the SSD and the game code that uses the data. You can see this on PlayStation 4. If I use an SSD with 10 times the speed of a standard hard drive, I probably see only double the loading speed, if that.
Mo Marco si ne va su.
For PlayStation 5, our goal was not just that the SSD itself be 100 times faster. It was that game loads and
Mangio le patatine,
a
Marco.
100 times faster. So every single potential
Fai
bottleneck
rumore con la
was
dita alla
addressed.
bocca.
And there are a
Scritto che
lot.
10 volte più veloce. Ma
Ok, la live va bene, una
And
cosa
what
è un po'
happens
di
is
fruscio,
100 times
però
larger.
Milioni di volte più
Conceptually,
veloce.
check-in is a pretty simple process. Data is loaded into system memory from the hard drive or SSD. It's examined. A few values
Gesù
are tweaked
Cristo, ci
to
cazzo
check
questo
in,
sento.
and then it's moved to its final location. At the SSD speeds we're talking about, that last part, moving the data, meaning copying it from one location to another, takes roughly an entire next-gen CPU. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. If all the overheads get 100 times larger, that will cripple the frame rate as soon as the player moves, and that massive stream of data
Ci
starts
metto
coming
un
on.
dislike allo video io.
So to solve all of that,
pure
we
io,
built
allora.
a lot
Ma
of
oggi
custom
tipo, no,
hardware,
che si
namely
vanterò,
a
non
custom
questa
flash
sorta,
controller
quanti cazzo
and a
vedi,
number of
coperto
custom
da
units in our
PS5.
main chip. The flash controller in the
Come
SSD
inviati.
was designed for smooth and bottleneck-free operation, but also with games in mind. For example, there are 6 levels of priority when reading from the SSD. Priority is very important. You can imagine the player heading into some new location in the world of the game requesting a few gigabytes of textures. And while those textures are being loaded, an enemy is shot and has to speak a few dying words. Having multiple priority levels lets the audio for those dying words get loaded immediately. On one side, that flash controller connects to the actual flash dies that supply the storage. To reach our bandwidth target of 5 gigabytes a second, we ended up with a 12-channel interface. 8 channels wouldn't be enough. The resulting bandwidth we achieved is actually 5.5 gigabytes a second. With a 12-channel interface, the most natural size that emerges for an SSD is 825 gigabytes. The key question for us was, is that enough? We could add more, but Flash certainly doesn't come cheap, and we have a responsibility to our gaming audience to be cost-effective with regards to what we put.
Andiamo a picchiare i neri.
Ultimately, we resolved
Sì,
this
comunque,
question by
cioè,
looking
vabbè, però non
at
credo
patterns
fino
of a broad
No,
range
no,
of
spero di no,
games.
almeno vuoi farmi
We
una
examined
volta.
specific games that they were playing over the course of a
Darino,
weekend,
una volta
a
non ci
week, or a
spiegavo
month,
più.
and whether
essere
that
su
set of
prenotazione.
games would fit properly on the SSD. We were able to establish that the friction caused by reinstalls or re-downloads would be quite low, and so we locked in on that 825 gigabytes
Come capiti di
while
Friday
also
di
preparing
PS5.
multiple strategies so
facciamoci
that
tutti a
those
Papa
who
Zero
want more
calvi.
storage can add it. I'll go through the details in a moment.
Che faccio?
Back to the flash controller.
Ci mettiamo il
On
giubbotto
the
di
other
pelle.
side, it connects to our main
Abbiamo
custom
le
chip via 4
A
lanes
maggio
of
ci
Gen
cado,
4 PCIe. And
Ah.
inside the main
Però la
custom
testa sarà
chip is a
freschissima.
pretty hefty
Ah, però lo
unit
potremmo
dedicated
fare.
to I/O.
Capo di
Before we
come
talk about what that does, let's talk
però
compression for a
tutti
moment.
tipo
PlayStation
No, io
4
c'ho
used
biondi.
zlib as its
per non
compression.
far sentire solo Mitch.
We decided
cazzo
to
è sto
use it
coso?
again on
No, vabbè,
PlayStation
così no.
5, but on my 2017
Come no?
tour,
Allora,
non c'è sta la piovra.
io avuto io
called
così.
Kraken
Io
from
dico, la
Rad.
zambetta dei
It's like
mondiali
zlib's
2006.
smarter
Io proprio
cousin.
skinhead,
Simple,
dico.
similar types of algorithms, but about 10% better
Neonazi.
compression, which is pretty big.
Guarda,
That means
finisce sta
10%
buffonata,
more
ma
gain on the
C'è stato
Blu-ray
pure,
disc
come-
or on the SSD. Kraken had only been out
Fateci
for a
vedere
year, but it was
FIFA.
already becoming a de facto industry
Che dolore al
standard.
polso.
Half of the teams I talked
Ma
to
come te l'ha
were
fatto,
either
Posso
Bill?
using
neanche,
or getting
non lo
ready to
so,
use it.
tendinite, cioè non posso
So
neanche
we
sbattere sul
hustled
tavolo
and
con-
built
per
a custom
indignazione.
compressor
Quando-
one capable of handling over 5 gigabytes
Io pensavo a
of
qualche allenamento con Umberto.
data a second.
Quello me l'hanno
After
girato sicuro.
decompression, that typically becomes 8 or 9
Maledetto
gigabytes, but the
Umberto.
unit itself is capable of outputting as much as
No,
22 gigabytes a second.
Ma
If the data
capimo,
happens to
non
Ma non ha già capito, ma c'è vuol dire sta immagine.
By the way, in terms
Sta
of
parlando
performance,
Kraken.
that custom
piccia.
compressor equates to 9 of our Zen 2 cores.
Lo Kraken
That's
c'hai
why we
in
can
tra.
compress the Kraken stream with the conventional.
Ah, Kraken si chiama
There's a
la
lot more
compression.
in the custom
Ah.
I/O unit, including a dedicated DMA controller. The game can direct exactly where it
nome.
wants to send the data coming off of the
Capocchia.
SSD. This equates to another Zen 2 core or copy performance. Its primary purpose is to remove check-in
C'è
as a
caldo.
bottleneck. There's 2 dedicated I/O coprocessors.
Oggi
in a
spiccio
large
Bioshock.
These aren't Zen 2
Basta.
cores. They're there principally to
Oh,
direct a
Biohazard.
variety of custom hardware around.
Cazzo, continua.
One of the coprocessors is
Ora stavo
dedicated
parlando
to
che quest'estate ci
SSDI.
facciamo tutti
This
azzare i
lets us
capelli.
bypass traditional
No, che
file
dici?
I/O
No,
as
probabile, a me
well.
già mo mi sa venire l'idea.
The
Di questo
other is
stavamo
responsible for
parlando.
memory management,
Facciamo
which I know
con gli
doesn't sound
skinhead.
like anything related to the SSD,
a me,
but a lot of
devo-
developers
Scendiamo
map
mazzate-
and remap
scendiamo mazzate
memory
i neri annanzi ai supermercati.
and this too
Io devo stare per
Agnew, a parte gli scherzi, a qua sta da callavo i vetri che ancora sta a fatica.
Coherency comes up a
Sono
lot in
immuni,
places.
Pier.
Probably
Nessuno
the biggest
c'è più,
coherency issue is
perché di
scale
solito si metteva
data
uno
in
ogni
GPU
angolo
caches.
del semaforo.
Flushing all of the GPU caches whenever the
sta
SSD
baglia?
is read is an unattractive
non lo so,
option
sta
and could
ancora
really hurt the GPU performance.
così,
So
non
we've
dico come l'altra
implemented
volta,
a
ma-
gentler way
Cioè,
of
non è
doing
successo
things,
niente.
where the
Tutti sti
coherency
2 mesi che siamo
engines
stati fuori, no?
inform the GPU of the overwritten
non stavo-
address ranges,
Ma
and
mo',
custom
10 minuti prima che
scrubbers in
iniziasse
several
sta
dozen
sta
GPU
minchiata.
caches do
sì,
pinpoint
credo.
evictions
Colpa di
of
questa
just those
minchiata.
addresses.
No, via, non è una
The best
minchiata.
thing is, as a game developer, we
Fanno
don't
vedere
need
il
to
super,
know
schemi.
any of
Fanno
this.
vedere poi il
You
super
don't even need to know if
design.
your data is compressed. You just indicate what
stuerto.
data you'd like to read from your original uncompressed file and where you'd like to put it and the whole
Allora, che
process
fa
of
roba di nuovo
loading
della
it
noi, fa un
happens
culo acquisto.
invisibly to you, and it
Ricorda un po'
varies.
male questo Cristiano, non so perché.
Back to the dream.
Sai
Thanks
che
to all of
sceneggiatori
that
che
surrounding
abbiamo?
hardware, our 5.5
Ma a me pare
GeForce
di
GTX
catalogo.
really should translate
Ah,
to
ecco, sì, è vero, bravo.
100 times faster
E
IO
pammi che quella a
and
destra.
allow the
Sta
dream
sotto
of
lui,
no
sul
load strength and super
sul
fast
banchetto, sta
streaming to
parte.
become a
SSD
reality.
5.5.
Having said that, expandability
E
of our
qua
SSD
invece
is
Glock,
going to be
Glock.
quite
Xbox
important.
c'ha
Flash is
6,
costly,
no?
and you may very well want to add storage to whatever we put in the console.
Sa qua Xbox c'ha 6.
Now, the kind of storage you need depends on how
vedi.
you're going to use it. If you have an
1-0.
extensive PlayStation 4 library,
Chi sulla live di Xbox,
Tra picca alle 6
Però
comincia alle
comunque
18.
l'Xbox alle
then
6 e
a
mezza
large external hard drive.
la live.
You can leave your games on the hard drive and play them
finirà mai
directly
questa
from there,
giornata.
thus saving the pricier SSD storage for your PlayStation 5 titles, or you can copy your active PlayStation 4 titles to the SSD. If your purpose in adding more storage is to play PlayStation 5 titles, though, ideally you would add your SSD storage. We will be supporting certain M2 SSDs. These are
Ma
internal
io l'ho
drives
finita la
that you
live
get on the
con
open
Tony,
market
beh.
and install in a bay
Non
in
lo
the
so mai,
PlayStation 5. As for which ones we support,
quando
when,
stavo, cioè, quando
I'll
io
get to that in
ho
a moment.
staccato che stavo vedendo
They
ieri sera
connect
di
through
quelle
the custom
stava
I/O unit,
stava.
just
In
like
realtà l'aveva
our
tolto,
SSD
però non
does.
aveva messo
So they can
infatti
take
pure
full
perché
advantage of the
io mi sono sto
decompression,
giocando a
I/O
Fortnite
coprocessors,
e non
and
c'ho più
all
la
the
live.
other features I
Sì,
was
era
talking about.
quello che stavo giocando.
Here's the catch, though. That commercial drive has to be at
Live.
least as
Nella
fast as
gamma
ours.
stabile.
Games
l'SSD
that
va
rely
niente.
on the speed of our SSD need to work flawlessly
Come
with
sai che
the
stanno
M2 drive.
dormendo?
When I gave the
Wow.
Memoria
Yeah.
interview last year, I
Chiamiamolo
said that
pure noi.
PlayStation 5 SSD
Sì.
is faster
Pensa
than anything
16
available
euro,
on
a
PC.
100 euro farà
At the
20.
time,
Ma quanto
commercial
cazzo lo
M2
odio.
drives used PCIe 3.0, and
Ah,
4
hai
lanes of
visto
that cap
tutti?
out at 3.5
Però sì,
gigabytes
dove
a
il
second.
cazzo cioè.
In other words, no
Penitenza mi
PCIe
staccate i soldi
3.0
della maniera
can hit the
impressionante.
required spec.
Io ora prendo a casa sua, però io
M2 drives with PCIe 4.0 are now out in the market.
io la volta
We're
no,
getting
io
our
ultimi
in
mi
samples
bloccavo
and
sapessi
seeing
che non potevo
4 or
circolare, io
5
correvo
gigabytes a
verso
second
la
from them.
Non saprei
By year's
se
end,
sono
I expect
messo.
there will be drives that saturate 4.0 and support 7 gigabytes a second.
Non lo faccio
Having said
vedere,
that,
non
we are comparing apples and oranges, though, because that commercial M2 drive will have its own architecture, its own flash controller, and so on. For example, the NVMe specification lays out a priority scheme
Sì, che si sta
for
lì,
what M2 drives can use.
Cini.
And that scheme is pretty nice, but it only has 2 true priority levels. Our drive
Lo
supports
faccio
6.
da conferenza.
We can hook up a drive with only 2 priority levels, definitely, but our custom I/O unit has to arbitrate the extra priorities rather than the M2 drive's flash controller. And so the M2 drive needs a little extra speed.
Ma dove, e dove, ma poi non le fate più niente con la casa, che devi venderla.
That commercial drive also needs to
Non è che ti
physically
volevi
fit
vendere dal
inside of the
centro.
bay we created in PlayStation 5
sì,
for
io
M2 drives.
non so
Unlike
niente.
internal hard drives, there's unfortunately no standard for the height of an M2 drive. And some M2 drives have
Right now,
giant
they-
heat sinks. In fact, some of them even have their own
Che ha
fans.
detto un bel...
Right now, we're getting M2 drive samples and benchmarking them in
C'è
various
qualcosa di
ways.
interessante.
When games
a
hit
me
the
l'ha
beta,
detto
as
ora.
they get ready for the PlayStation 5 launch year end, we'll also be doing some compatibility testing to make sure that the architecture
un
of
sbadiglio di
particular
ieri.
M2 drives isn't
Yeah.
too foreign for the games to handle.
10.28 teraflop.
Once we've done that compatibility
PlayStation.
testing, we should be able to
Ai
start
ai
letting
ai
you know
ai
which drives will
ai.
physically fit and which drive samples have benchmarks appropriately
Xbox
high.
arriva.
Ai ai
It would be
ai
great if
ai
it happened
ai.
by launch, but it's likely to be a bit past it. So please
Rottori
hold off
coglioni.
on getting that M2
Oh, quindi
drive.
scrivete in
until you
chat.
hear.
Io sto scrivendo in ora,
Back
senza
to our
caga.
principles.
Come ti chiami,
Balancing
Domenico Doramo?
evolution
Sì.
and revolution is the second of them.
Io
This
scritto
was
Pierpaolo
definitely
adesso.
a recurring
No,
theme.
no,
with the
no, Orio,
GPU.
no, un cazzo, guarda quanto è veloce. No, no,
Agno, io sto sciogolo al gioco dei pinguini.
If we only have more performance, it's not really a
Andiamo,
new
vai,
generation.
vai, vai,
console.
andiamo, vado
Of
gli
course,
occhi.
many of these capabilities
Vai, l'ho messo.
result in
Sì,
more
però io devo
performance.
un po', Sama.
That's part
Aspetta
of
un
why a
attimo.
PlayStation 5 teraflop
No, no.
is more powerful than a PlayStation 4 teraflop. But we aren't just
Arriva dopo
looking
un po'
for
le porte,
performance. We also need
Vedi
the
ora?
ability to do something with the GPU that
No,
could not have
no,
been done
tanto di quanto
before.
no.
C'ho
And we need
TS.
higher
E da me mi è
performance
uscito
per
scritto
watt.
dei teraflops.
Every time we double
Guarda
the
me,
performance of some
preparo-
GPU
Sì,
component,
c'ho aperto
we
la
don't
cosa
want to
di
find out we
multiplayer.
doubled the power
Vedi,
consumption
dov'è?
and the heat
Cosa
consumption.
multiplayer?
But at the
Della
same
chat.
time, we
Della
have to
chat,
make
della
sure
chat.
the GPU can run PS4 games, and we have to
Ba
ensure
Facebook.
that the architecture is easier for the developers to adopt. Now, Backwards compatibility was handled masterfully by AMD. They treated it as a key need throughout the design.
Come ti chiami, Marco?
As our solution to adding new features without blindsiding developers, we made sure that if there were new significant features, it would be optional to use them. The
Madonna, i
GPU
giapponesi
supports
scrivono
ray tracing. You don't
buonanotte.
have to use ray tracing to play your game. The GPU supports primitive shaders, but you can release your first game on PlayStation 5 without making any movement. Before I get into the capabilities of the GPU, I'd like to make clear 2 points that can be quite
Sì,
confusing.
pure io. Ho soldato innamorato, sarò anche lì.
First, we have a custom AMD
Chiama,
GPU
Dom.
based on
PS5.
our RDNA technology. What does that mean? AMD
marchio di
is
fabbrica.
continuously improving and revising their tech. For RDNA 2,
Ci faccio
their goal
live e
is
faccio
roughly
buongiorno
speaking,
soldatini.
to reduce the power consumption
zero.
by re-architecting the GPU to put data close to where it's needed, to optimize the GPU for
Però senza
performance,
numeri,
and to add a
capito,
new, more
ci
advanced
provo.
feature set. But that feature set is
Cerco di
malleable,
smanettare con
which
i
is to
trattini
say
bassi.
we have our own needs for PlayStation. And
No,
that
ieri
can
ho
factor
giocato
into
con un
what the
team
AMD
napoletano che si
roadmap
chiamava
looks
Chita
like.
Morta.
So
bravo.
collaboration is born. If we bring concepts to AMD that are felt to be widely useful, then they can be adopted into RDNA 2 and used well, including PC GPUs.
Oh no.
If the ideas are sufficiently
prendendo modo
specific to what
GPU.
we are trying to accomplish,
No,
like the
devi andare
GPU
già
cache
là.
scrubbers I was
Sì,
talking
non lo sento
about,
più.
then they end up being
No,
just
vejo come
perfect.
stai.
If you see a
Ciao,
similar
va.
discrete GPU
Tanto-
available as a
Torna.
PC card at roughly the
Ciao,
same
va.
time as we release our
Ciao.
kits, that means our collaboration with AMD succeeded
Beh, per tu stai andando.
in producing technology useful in both
aspetta.
worlds.
No, vedi,
It
Porta il
doesn't
computer, porta il
mean that we
computer
as
giù.
Sony simply
Magari fanno
incorporated
vedere-
the
no,
PC
che
part
cazzo mi vuoi?
into our console. This continuous improvement in AMD technology means it's dangerous to rely on teraflops as an absolute indicator of performance, and CU count should be avoided
Sto
as
cazzo,
well.
vanno a vedere.
In the case of CPUs, we all understand this. The PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5.
Quando
each
me la
have
traspetto,
eight
io mo tipo
CPUs,
sta palla e
we
poi
never
sbuca
think
tutta
that
una volta la
meant
PlayStation
capabilities
5.
and
Pa!
It's the same for CUs. For one thing, they've been getting much
Vedo quella
larger
che
over
in
time.
diretta sta.
Adding new features means adding
No,
more
quello di quelli
transistors.
fuori.
In fact,
quello che stanno
the
succedendo.
transistor count for a PlayStation
Sì,
5
ma-
CU is 62%
Tranne qui.
larger than the transistor count for a PlayStation 4.
Oh, quanti
Second, the PlayStation 5 GPU is
Come sono già
backwards
20 minuti
compatible with
Cazzo
PlayStation
para,
4.
butto sangue.
One way you can achieve backwards compatibility is to put the previous console's
Put the
chipset
pair.
in the new console, like we did with
Quando
some
qui c'è
PlayStation 3s.
la challenge
But that's,
di
of course,
palleggiare con la
extremely
cartigienica l'ha fatta
expensive.
pure Miki.
A better way is to incorporate any
Veramente.
differences
Sì.
in the
Ah,
previous
che
console's
vergogna.
logic into the new console's custom chips.
Con la maglietta
Meaning
con la
that
scritta
even as the
bomb.
technology evolves,
Ai
the
soldati
logic
di
and
Andromeda
feature set
bomb.
that PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 4
Uno
Pro
dice scappato
titles
ieri alla
rely on
reperta.
is still available in backwards compatibility modes. One advantage of this strategy is that once
Quando da
backwards
correre,
compatibility is in the
Backwards
console, it's
compatibility.
in. It's not as if a cost down will remove backwards compatibility like it did on PlayStation 3. Achieving this unification of functionality took years of efforts by AMD, as any roadmap advancement creates a potential divergence in logic. Running
No.
PS4 and PS4 titles at
Yuri ha più
boosted
giochi da
frequencies has
vendere.
also added complexity. The boost is truly massive this time around, and some game code just can't handle it. Testing has to be done on a title-by-title basis. Results
Sto il
are
2.5
excellent,
trapela
though.
da
We
una foto
recently
sulla
took a look at the top 100 PlayStation 4 titles as ranked
Non
by
lo sento
Playtime,
più alto, lo stanno
and we're
oscurando.
expecting almost all of them to be playable at launch on PlayStation.
Mi
Sta
sento
scoprendo troppe cose.
Sì,
With
sì,
regards to new features, as I said, our strategy was to try to break new ground, but at the same time
Ma no,
not
del
to
joystick.
require
Cazzo
use
di
of the
stavi
new
tipo, ti ho
GPU
sbagliata.
capability.
sì.
For more than a decade,
No, vabbè,
GPUs have
un'immagine
imposed
di
a
un
restriction
poster.
on game engines.
E ci sta
Software
il
handles
joystick,
vertex processing, but
vabbè,
for
ma
the
non si
most
vede un
part,
cazzo.
dedicated
Non
hardware
si
is
vede.
responsible for the triangles and other geometry that the vertices form. That means it's not possible to do even basic optimizations,
Ah, sì,
such
ho
as
visto,
aborting processing
uguale a
of the
quelli della
vertex if
PlayStation
all
4.
geometry that uses it is off-screen.
Vabbè, si vede metà gioco, più o meno.
PlayStation 5 has a new unit called the
Speriamo
Geometry
che almeno
Engine,
gli
which brings
analogici,
handling of triangles and other primitives under
Uguali, guarda.
full programmatic control. As a game developer, you're free to ignore its
Anzi, mi sembra
existence and
leggermente
use
più
the
grande
PlayStation
touchpad
5
forse,
GPU as if it were no more capable
Sì,
than
no,
the
dicevano che era
PS4
più grande il
GPU.
joystick.
Or you can
Tutto.
use this new intelligence in
Molto più
various
simile a
ways.
quello di Xbox.
Simple usage could be performance
Ovvio.
optimization, such as removing backfaced or off-screen vertices and triangles. More complex usage
Quanto
involves something
ciarla,
called
quanto
media
ciarla.
shaders, which
Comunque
allow the
incredibile, ogni
game
volta che mi
to
vedo qualcosa
synthesize geometry on the fly
sempre una
as it's
merda
being
esce.
rendered. It's a brand new
Uno di quei
capability.
tre che mi sono visto con
Using
Pierpaolo
primitive
è
shaders
il
on
tre più
PlayStation
brutto del
5 will
mondo.
allow for a broad variety of
Pierpaolo,
techniques,
più brutto del
including
mondo.
smoothly varying
no,
levels of
Pierpaolo.
detail, addition of procedural detail
più
to close-up
nessuno ha.
objects, and improvements
Beh,
in
non
particle
l'avevo
and
pensato.
other visual
Esistente.
effects. Another major new feature of our custom RDNA 2-based GPU is ray tracing, using the same strategy as AMD's upcoming PC
Riesco a
GPUs.
respirare.
The CPUs contain a
Madonna,
new
ray tracing,
specialized
ah.
unit called
Madonna,
the
ray
intersection
tracing,
engine,
vediamo.
Qualcosa
which
si
can
muove.
calculate the intersection
Marco,
of
questo
rays
sta
of
pure
boxes
sulla
and
scheda video
triangles.
tua.
To use the intersection engine,
Ma tipo
first you
preventivo
build
l'ha
what is
fatto amico
called
di
an
Biasco, lo
acceleration
spiegavo che mi
structure.
ascoltavi.
It's data
Sì.
in
No, non è-
RAM that contains
No, quello del
all of the
negozio.
geometry.
È quello del
There's a
negozio
specific
che
set of formats
Alessandro è
used
diventato
for
praticamente
variations on the same BVH concept.
perché
In
Alessandro
your shader program, you
è
use a
diventato
new
praticamente
instruction
tipo con
that
questo
asks
qua.
the intersection
ok,
engine to
pensavo che
check a
lavorava.
value against the BVH.
No, perché
While the intersection engine is
è andato a
processing the
comprare tipo la
requested
scheda
ray
video da
triangle or
lui.
ray box intersections, the shaders are free to do other work. Having said that, the ray tracing instruction is pretty memory intensive, so it's a good mix with logic heavy code.
No, Lady Rugani,
There's of
sono
course no
incinta, ora
need to
abbiamo
use ray
paura.
tracing. PS4 graphics engines will run just fine on PlayStation 5. But it presents an opportunity for those
Madonna,
interested.
Vagno, oggi mi messo
I'm thinking it'll take less than a
Messenger,
million
stanno
rays a
certi
second to have a big
gruppi e
impact
cose.
on
Allora,
audio.
ogni-
That should be enough for audio occlusion and some
Sinceramente,
reverb
è
calculations.
meglio che non la
With a
fanno
bit
vedere a
more of the
questi
GPU invested
Sì,
in
no,
ray
sto
tracing, it should be possible
no.
to do some very
L'unica
nice
cosa buona che
audio
dovrebbero fare è
Uscire così.
mettere il prezzo.
Having said that, adding ray
Dire il
traced
prezzo senza
shadows
far
and
vedere la
reflections to a traditional
Aspetta,
graphics
mi
engine
stendo sto
could
baruglietto.
easily take hundreds of millions of rays a
Oppure avete
second,
che scivoli
and
via
full ray
questo.
tracing could take billions. How far can we go? I'm starting to get quite bullish.
Fate
I've
vedere
already seen a
qualcosa, però,
PlayStation 5
maledetti.
title that's successfully using ray tracing based reflections in complex animated scenes with only modest costs. Another set of issues for the GPU involve size and frequency. How big do we make the GPU, and what frequency do we run it at? This is a balancing act. The chip has a cost, and there's a cost for whatever we use to supply that chip with power and cooling. In
Dona
general,
e
I like
scrivi
running the
a
GPU
RDQ.
at
Io so
higher
dove
frequency.
abiti.
Let me show
Io
you
so dove
why.
abiti.
Viva, sta di via.
Here's two
No,
possible
io so
configurations
dove
for a
abiti.
GPU
Poi
roughly of the level
mandi un'altra
of a
cosa,
PlayStation 4
sempre
Pro.
in euro
This
e
is a
di a
thought
tutti i cosi.
experiment. Don't
Chi
take
vuole
these
sapere dove
configurations too
abito che mi
seriously.
doni a
If you
me.
just calculate teraflops, you get the same number. But actually, the performance is noticeably different because teraflops is defined as the computational
Poi ti dicono
capability
loro
of the
per sapere dove
vector
abita quel
ALU.
bastardo.
That's just one part of the GPU. There are a lot of other units. And those other units all run faster when the GPU's frequency is higher. At 33% higher frequency, rasterization goes 33% faster. Processing the command buffer goes
quelle
that much faster.
specifiche,
The L2 and
le 13
other caches
teraflops,
have
tutti
that
quei-
much higher bandwidth. And
Quella
so on.
grafico.
About the only
potente.
downside is that system memory is 33%
Perché al
further away
lancio
in
ne
terms of
usciranno
cycles.
sicuramente
But the large number
due.
of benefits more than
una potente,
counterbalance
una
that.
meno potente.
As a friend of mine
Invece
says, a
PlayStation
rising tide lifts
No,
all
come l'iPhone, l'iPhone X e
Also,
l'iPhone
it's easier
XR.
to fully
infatti si
use
chiama
36
X,
CUs in
perché sarà una
parallel than
serie.
it is to fully use 48
Uguale
CUs.
cacao.
When triangles are small, it's much harder to fill all
Xbox
those
XR.
CUs with useful work. So there's a lot to be said for faster, assuming you can handle the resulting power and heat issues, which frankly
Ancora sta a
we
parlare di
haven't
Mueghi,
always
muerti
done
sua.
the best job.
Cazzo.
Part of the reason for that
Non mi
is,
ricordavo.
historically, our
Mamma.
process for setting CPU and
In bella
GPU frequencies has relied on
Allora,
some
guarda,
potentially
l'unica
guesswork
cosa-
with regards to how much
Meno male che non
electrical
sto
power
aspettando
games will
fino
consume
c'è la notte
and
tardi
how much
di
heat will be
pomeriggio.
produced.
Che
on
fortuna,
inside
vero
the
cazzo.
Immagini.
Ti
Vabbè,
ricordi,
ma secondo me
Ua?
l'hanno fatto
varies
apposta.
a lot
Ua,
from game to
ti
game.
ricordi il
When I
salottino?
play God of
36
War on
minuti sono
PS4
passati,
Pro,
Ragno.
Quello ho
I know
detto
the
prima,
power
ho detto
consumption is
l'unica
high
volta-
just by the fan noise.
Cioè, le cose...
But
qua
power
c'è una
isn't simply
lezione.
about engine quality. It's about the minutia of what's being
Oh, God of War è
displayed.
tutto.
It's counterintuitive,
Sì.
but
Mangiato uno ancora là,
processing dense
tavola.
geometry typically consumes less power than processing simple geometry, which is, I suspect, why Horizon's map screen, with its low triangle count, makes my PS4 Pro heat up so much. Our process on previous consoles has been to try to guess what the
Però quando si sente
maximum
un
power
fruscio,
consumption during
però
the
vabbè.
entire
Riscaldamento
console
che stai
life will be,
insappando.
which is to say,
La live.
the
Ciao,
worst case
scrivo nella
scene
chat
in
due
the
ore
worst
fa.
case game and prepare a cooling solution that we think
Guarda
will
ora
be
che brutto
quiet
titolo,
at that
Beppa.
power level.
Cazzo da fuoco,
If we get it right,
Sì,
fan
sì,
noise is
cinque.
minimal. If we get it wrong, the console will be quite loud for the higher power games, and there's even a chance that
Capirai
it
più nello
will
stesso titolo
and
di
shut
Play
down if we miss
della pagina di
estimated power
PlayStation.
too badly.
T'ha già risposto,
Guarda
ma...
tu,
PlayStation 5 is
stato più...
especially
Però come fai a
challenging
fare
because
così,
the
li metti la
CPU
chiocciola?
supports 256-bit
chiocciola?
native instructions that consume a lot of power.
Perché tu
These are
dici
great
arancione?
here and there, but presumably
E forse
only
perché so
minimally
il coso.
used. Or are they?
Un capo.
If we plan for major
No, no,
256-bit instruction
Come hai fatto a
usage,
taggarmi?
we
È
need to
scritto
set
solamente
the
Orion.
CPU clock substantially lower
ma non
or
male,
noticeably
scritto.
increase
Tipo-
the size of the
detto
power
so.
supply.
Aspetta.
Però a me le cose di per palo non mi
So,
escono.
after much discussion,
Vedi, è
we
proprio la
decided
cosa
to go
mia
with
per
a
far
very
capire che sono...
different
RDNA,
direction
che
on
cazzo era
PlayStation 5.
RDNA?
No,
We
ma non dico il nome
built
tuo,
a
Saperpa, il nome
GPU
mio.
36
Beh.
CPUs. Mind you,
A me mo uscirà arancione il nome
CPUs
mio.
are large.
Ah sì,
Each
allora
has
può darsi
62%
che
more
per farti capire che
transistors
sei tu,
than the
capito?
CPUs we were
Penso.
using on
come hai
PlayStation
fatto?
4. So,
Allora,
if we
anch'io
compare
quest'anno pure su
transistor
sto
counts,
programma qua.
36 RDNA
Tipo a me adesso
GPUs
scrive anche
equates
si
to
esce
roughly
normale.
58
Invece se lo scrivo
plus
io...
CPUs. It is a
Mi sta dicendo, però
fairly
non ho fatto
sizable
nulla.
GPU. Then we went
Aspetta,
with a
fammelo scrivere
variable
soltanto
frequency
ora.
strategy for PlayStation 5, which is to say we continuously run the GPU and CPU in boost mode. We supply a generous amount of
pensato
electrical
sta-
power
Arancione.
and then increase the frequency of GPU
Forse
and
perché
CPU until they reach
sono...
the capabilities of the
per
system's
farti...
cooling solution. It's a completely different
Fotomaticamente,
paradigm.
capito?
Rather than running at constant frequency and letting power vary based on the workload, we run at essentially constant power and let the frequency vary based on the workload.
Cioè, quadrigif di
We then
Simpson.
tackle the engineering challenge of a cost-effective and high-performance cooling solution designed for that specific power level. In some ways, it becomes a simpler problem because there are no more unknowns. There's no need to guess what power consumption the worst-case game might have. As for the details of the cooling solution, we're saving them for our teardown. I think you'll be quite happy with what the engineering team came up with. So, how fast can we run the GPU and CPU with this strategy? The simplest approach
No,
would be to
Marco, ho
look at
messo un
the
video sul
actual
gruppo di
temperature of the
player
silicon die
che
and
stava
throttle
il
frequency
video che
on that
faceva,
basis.
combatteva nel
But that won't
team
work. It fails to
Baffo
create a consistent
contro
PlayStation
Okram.
5 experience. It wouldn't do
Ah,
to
sì,
run
sì,
the
avevo
console
visto.
slower simply
Ci
because
capponi
it was
picchiato
not
Okram.
root. So
Sì, sì.
rather than
No,
look
non
at the
sto
actual
seguendo più
temperature
quello,
of the
ormai
silicon
si è
die,
montato
we look
a
at the
capo.
activities that the
Chiaro,
GPU and
baffo.
CPU are performing and set the frequencies on that basis,
Poi stai
which
in un
makes
team comunque di un
everything
canale
deterministic.
di...
Sì, sì, sempre cambierò.
While we're at it, we also use AMD's Smart Shift technology and send any unused power from the CPU to the GPU so it can squeeze out a few more pixels. The benefits of this strategy are quite large.
Quanti amici
Running
quanti
a
iscritti c'ha?
GPU
Ma
at 2
75.000,
GHz
santo
was
Dio.
looking like an
Quello dopo Michelle
unreachable
iniziale.
target with the old fixed frequency strategy. With this new paradigm, we're able to run way
No,
over
già-
that. In
già
fact, we
sta
have
quel
to
team là
cap
che
the
c'ha
GPU
il-
Cioè, allora io,
at
io per quello
2.23
vorrei fare
GHz
YouTube,
so
solamente
that
per
we can
prendermi quella
guarantee
targa.
that the on-chip logic operates properly.
Pure io, ma
36
stampare da più la
CPUs
stampante
at
per
2.23 GHz
No,
is
vero.
2.3
Era un
times
milione
faster.
direttamente
And we expect the
dai
GPU to
Moonbat.
spend most of its time at
Batto.
or close to that frequency and performance.
10 volte.
Similarly, running the CPU at 3 GHz was causing headaches with the old strategy. But
Guarda,
now we can run it as
passati.
high as 3.5 GHz. In fact, it spends
resistente,
most of
12
its time
minuti.
at that frequency.
Veramente oggi c'è
That
una
doesn't
marca.
mean all games will be running at 2.23
Sì, non
GHz
ho
or
pronunciato.
3.5 GHz. When that worst case game arrives, it will run at a lower clock speed, but not too much lower. To reduce power by 10%,
tanto
only
che
causes
amore.
a
Detto che usciva
reduction in
il
frequency. So I'd expect any
video,
downclocking
56.
to be pretty minor.
Cosa? Tu hai
All
detto
things
che usciva il
considered, the
video?
change to a
Sì,
variable
acabo,
frequency
c'è
approach
Non era
will
meglio
show
che
significant
ai Games Award così
The
inaspettato
final
ti
of our
facevano
three
vedere
principles
tutto,
was about
tutta
finding
l'architettura,
new dreams. It's
come hanno
important
fatto
for
quelli
us on
della
the hardware
Microsoft.
team to find new ways
No, vabbè,
to
ma ora
expand or deepen
sicuramente
gaming, and
Io
that's what
voglio
led us to a
l'orchestra.
focus.
Sì, ma
on
l'architettura la fanno vedere
As players, we experience the game
Ma
through
ci fanno
through audio
troppo.
and through the
Cioè questo
feedback we
posso
receive
capire
from
per i,
controller, such as rumble or haptics.
per il
Personally, I
settore,
feel a
diciamo,
game is just dead
telegiornali.
Sì,
Questa è
telegiornali,
più una
quali.
specie di
but
conferenza
the
per
impact of audio is huge as well.
Cristo si
At
chiamava.
the same
così,
time,
così
the
non
audio
saremo
team on a
tentati di
game project has to
ordinarla.
do a lot with a limit.
Però,
For example, on PlayStation
nulla
4, there's
proprio.
fierce competition for the Jaguar
Dillo
CPU
B,
cores.
menatela
Audio
fa
typically
quale?
ends up getting
No.
just a fraction of a core. That's not much of a computational resource,
Ho sbagliato tutto,
particularly
perché
when
ce la
you
facevano vedere
consider that the
subito,
visuals
subito.
run
Quello
at
prima
30 or
minuto.
60 frames a second,
Sempre
but
effetti
audio
speciali,
processing needs
subito
to
la
happen
vediamo.
at almost 200
Poi si
times
diventa vedere la
per second.
portata tipo la introduceva.
So, It's been tough going making forward progress on audio with PlayStation 4,
ma tu
particularly
c'è
when PlayStation 3 was such a beast when it came to
una
audio.
copertina.
The SPUs themselves were almost a perfect device for audio rendering. Simple pipelined algorithms could really take
Madonna, ma però a me le
advantage of
patatine dopo
multiple
picca mi
scale
fanno il
and
palato.
frequently reach
Leggiai,
100% utilization of the floating point unit.
Già,
There's unfortunately nothing comparable on PlayStation 4. Probably the most dramatic progress in the PlayStation 4 generation has been with virtual reality.
Ma
The
che lo chiama
PSVR
VR?
hardware has its own audio unit.
VR,
It supports about 50 pretty decent 3D sound sources. And this provided a hint as to where we could go with audio, as well as some valuable experience.
Oh, God.
Not to oversimplify, but here were our goals for audio on PlayStation 5. The first goal was to create
Vanno un momento,
audio
fittato
not
vanno,
just
si
via
scema,
audio
si va.
for sound barriers or headphones. That meant audio
Sì,
had to
sì,
be part of the
sì,
console.
salvate,
It
grazie.
couldn't be a peripheral. The second goal was to support hundreds of sound sources. We didn't want developers to have to pick and choose what sounds would get 3D effects and which wouldn't. We wanted every sound in the game
Presenze
to have
locali.
dimensionality. And finally, we wanted to really take on the challenges of presence and locality. Now, when we say presence, we mean the feeling that you're actually there. You've entered the matrix. It's not, of course, something we thought we could perfectly achieve. The idea was that if we stopped using
Sì,
just
ma dove
rain
sarà?
sound,
No,
and
che tipo
instead
l'audio del
used
QR
lots of 2
sarà
audio sources for raindrops
localizzato intorno a te, capito?
all sorts of locations around you, and at some point your brain
Tipo
would
se tu
take
ti
a leap
senti
and
un
you
rumore da
begin to
dietro
have
perché
this
c'è una cosa
feeling. This feeling of real presence inside the
tipo
virtual world.
un
of
audio
the game.
4D.
This has the capacity to affect your appreciation of the game, just like music in a game does. The concept of locality is simpler. It's just your sense of where the audio is
No,
coming from.
grande.
To the right of you, behind you, above you. This can
Quanti X
immerse you
quadrati,
further in the
triangoli.
game, and it can also directly enhance
Però
the
hanno
game.
sbagliato.
To
No,
use
dovevano fare
Dead
questa
Space
cosa,
as an
non
example,
dovevano
I
scrivere
know, old
tipo
school.
annuncio della
You're fighting
PlayStation 5.
enemies in fairly
in
dark,
realtà
spooky locations.
Si chiama The Road.
Back in the day, if you played the game using the
Quelli
TV
che
speakers,
quelli
you
che
could
l'hanno
tell that there was
pompato
one
troppo-
last enemy growling
quelli che
and
l'hanno
hunting you
pompato un
down,
po' troppo
but it was
sono
difficult to
stati
tell quite where that
così-
enemy was.
I Melago.
With headphones, you could tell that the enemy was somewhere on the right, which let you deduce, if you couldn't see it, that it must be somewhere behind and to your right. But with 3D audio,
Sappi quanto
with
gli avrà dato
locality,
Bax
the
su questa
idea is you
puttanata.
know the enemy is
No,
precisely
beh.
there, and you
Non
turn
basta
and
fare
you take it
l'allenamento
out.
con la maglietta di Mario
So,
da Juve.
how do we know where a sound is coming from in the first place?
Devo tornare a Juve.
Well, all those
i giornali,
buttons and bullets
proprio,
in here
i
have
giornali
meaning,
che fanno
evolutionarily
mai.
speaking. Based on what direction the sound is coming from, sound waves bounce around inside the ear, there's some constructive and destructive interference, and the result is a change in volume. The phase of the sound also shifts, depending on what path the sound wave took to reach the ear canal. These volume changes and phase shifts are different for each direction and also vary
Ciao.
Si leva la giacca, c'ho quella francese sotto.
Head size and
Tornato.
head shape also
Tornato.
impact the sound in a similar fashion.
C'è un po' di calore.
The way that the sound changes, based on direction and frequency, can be encoded in a table called the head-related transfer function, or HRTF. Here's part of one. The
Qui ci sta
vertical
parlare
axis
di
is
cose
the
che non
frequency,
mi fottono proprio un
the
cazzo,
horizontal
nessuno.
axis is the direction, front, back, left, right,
Ma a
and the
nessuno
color gives
interessano
the
queste
degree
cose,
of
manco chi ci
attenuation of the
vita.
sound at that frequency.
Però Pierpaolo,
HRTF is as unique to an individual as a fingerprint is.
Tipo un
In
gioco
fact,
americano.
you're looking at mine right now.
Mia.
Here's how we measure an
Stavo
HRTF.
dicendo,
We've taken hundreds of people through this process.
o hanno
We
sbagliato
put
loro
a microphone in the
tipo a
subject's left and
pomparlo
right ear
dicendo
canals,
che
and then
avrebbero
sit the
annunciato
subject down
PS5,
in the middle of an array
o sono
of
stati tipo i
22
media,
speakers.
le-
We then
cazzo
play
sono,
an
tipo
audio
sti
sweep
cosi-
from each speaker as we rotate this.
No, non credo,
In the
secondo me la
course of
faranno
10 or
vedere.
20 minutes, we're
C'è un
able to
brutto
sample
sgabello,
the
non ce l'ho
HRTF
dato, ci potete
in
darlo
over
meglio.
1,000
Secondo
locations.
me, mentre quando
Using an
le cose
HRTF
aveva
for rendering audio
No, secondo me
creates
non
an
la fanno vedere.
unparalleled quality, but it's
Infinita.
computationally expensive.
e forse pure meglio
The simplest way to
la
use
merda
an
di cose.
HRTF is
No,
to
ma
No,
guarda,
no,
secondo
no,
me
no,
l'architettura la faranno
no,
vedere.
coming from one of those
Devo
1,000
segnarlo.
locations we sample.
No, ma è meglio.
Unfortunately, the processing has to be done in
È più bello
frequency
che fai
domain
tipo-
rather than time domain, so there's multiple fast Fourier transforms needed
Sì,
for
sta
every
scrivendo.
sound source, for every audio tick. That's a lot
Guarda,
of
sta
multiple.
annunciando una cosa pasa.
This
Però
computational
se leggi
complexity
la
is the determining
descrizione,
factor for our
punto
strategy.
scrive
It meant we had to bite the bullet and
PS5
design and build
System
a custom hardware
Architecture.
unit for 3D
sì.
audio. Collectively, we're referring to the hardware unit and the proprietary algorithms we run on it as Tempest 3D audio tape. The meaning of 3D audio and technology should be pretty obvious here. As for Tempest, I feel it really reflects our goals with audio. It suggests a certain intensity of experience and also hints at your presence within it. We're calling the hardware unit that we built the Tempest engine. It's based on AMD's GPU technology. We modified a compute unit in such a way as to make it very close to the SPUs in PlayStation 3. Remember when I said that they were ideal for audio? So the Tempest engine has no caches, just like an SPU. All data access is via DMA, just like an SPU. Our target was that it would have more power than a CPU, thanks to the parallelism that a GPU can achieve, and that it would be more efficient than our GPU, thanks to the SPU-like architecture. The goal being to make possible near 100% utilization of the CU's
Dad, can I buy
vector
this
units.
console?
Where we ended up is a unit with roughly the same bandwidth as all 8 Jaguar cores in the PlayStation 4 combined. If we were to use the same algorithms as PSVR, that's enough for something like 5,000 sound sources. But of course, we want to use more complex algorithms, and we don't need anything like that number of sounds. It would have been wonderful if a simpler strategy, such as using Dolby Atmos peripherals, could have achieved our goals, but we wanted 3D audio for all, not just those with licensed soundbars or the like. Also, we wanted many hundreds of sound sources, not just the 32 that Atmos supports. And finally, we wanted to be able to throw an overwhelming amount of processing power at the problem, but it wasn't clear what kind of peripheral might have inside. In fact, with the Tempest engine, we've even got enough power that we can allocate some to the games, to the extent that games want to make use of convolution reverb and other algorithms that are either computationally expensive or need high bandwidth. But the primary purpose of the Tempest engine remains 3D audio. Now, 3D audio is a major academic research topic. It's safe to say that no one in the world has all of the answers. The set of algorithms that has to be invented, tuned, or implemented to realize our vision for 3D audio is immense.
Ma quando si va a fare quello questo?
Use of HRTFs in games is quite complex. Or I talked about making a sound source appear as if it's coming from one of those thousands of but for high quality 3D audio, we have to handle other parts. Drive read speed by the compression.
8 minuti mancano, non
HRTF data from the closest location. The sound source needs very special handling as that blend keeps changing, and that can cause phase artifacts in the resulting audio. Or the sound source might have a size to it, meaning it should feel as if it's coming from rather than There's also whole categories of approaches to be handled. 3D audio can be implemented using individual processing of 3D sound sources. But alternatively, Ambisonics speaks somewhat like the And finally, there's audio devices. The player might be using headphones or TV speakers or have a higher-end surround sound setup with 6 or more speakers, all of which need different approaches. That's a lot of variation. It's nice to have the computational resources of the Tempest engine, but it's clear that achieving our ultimate goals with 3D audio is going to be a multi-year step. Having said that, headphone audio implementation is largely complete at this time. It was a natural place for us to start. With headphones, we control exactly what each ear hears, and therefore the algorithmic development and implementation are more straightforward. For TV speakers and stereo speakers, we're in the process of implementing virtual surround sound. The idea being that if you're sitting in a sweet spot in front of the TV, then the sound can be made to feel as if it's coming from any direction, even behind you.
Qua lo vedi poco più basso questo bracciolo da quello a destra, vattene proprio lontano.
It's more complex because the left ear can hear the right ear and vice versa. We have a basic implementation of virtual surround sound up and running. We're now looking at increasing the size of that sweet spot, which is to say, making the area you need to be in to feel the 3D effect larger. And we're also working to boost the sense of headphone audio is the current gold standard for 3D audio on PlayStation 5, but we're going to see what we can do to bring virtual surround sound to a similar level.
Hanno
After which,
spedito
we'll start in
Animal
on setups with
Crossing.
more speakers, such as 6-channel suites.
Grazie.
It's now to the point where some of the PlayStation 5 games in development are extensively using these systems. One of the game demos allows you to toggle between conventional PlayStation 4 style stereo audio and our new 3D audio. I listened with just an ordinary pair of over-the-ear headphones and wow, I could feel a difference. 3D audio has that dimensional feel to it. Conventional stereo audio feels smashed flat by comparison. The improvement is obvious. So, a big advancement, but have I entered the Matrix? Does my brain believe I'm really there? Like I was talking about earlier.
No, hanno
when I
sudato gli
explained
schemi
our
termici.
Well, the answer is no.
But the
But you've
content,
probably caught on to what's missing here, namely whose HRTF was being used. It
Però
wasn't
ognuno-
mine. It was the
parte
default
sta minchiata di
HRTF.
merda.
The audio team analyzed
Dici,
the hundreds that they
quando
measured and
faranno
chose the
poi
one they
qual-
felt was the closest fit to the total gameplay
detto più.
audience.
Serio.
This shows a piece of the
Vediamoci,
default
guarda.
HRTF on the left, my
non
HRTF
ci
on the right.
crederò
You can
più.
see that the general features are much the
Sì,
same,
più.
but the details are quite
Con
different.
del sushi caldo.
With the default HRTF, as I said, the 3D audio sounds pretty great. When I use my
immagini dura
HRTF,
3
though,
ore
the
sto
audio
coso.
reaches a higher level of
Ormai
realism,
siamo in
which is to
ballo.
say
No,
that
no,
when using
tipo che
headphones and
questa è la
my
prima parte.
HRTF, I occasionally get
Speriamo.
fooled and even think a sound is
Speriamo
coming
di
from
no.
the real world when it's actually coming from the game. A corollary to this is that there are
Comunque non
few
posso
people
parlare
whose
mezz'ora
HRTFs
dell'audio.
are sufficiently far from the default HRTF, that's the red dot here, that they can toggle
Although
between
no one
PS4
cares,
style and
that's
PS5
it.
style audio and not sense much difference. I've had a few
Incazzati
people describe
stanno.
the PlayStation 5's 3D audio as sounding like a bit
Xbox,
better
Xbox.
stereo audio. Presumably they're the ones at the very edges of this diagram. Which means what HRTF you're using is key. I'd like everyone to be able to experience what I'm experiencing, but
Spero pure
obviously
lo
it's
schermo
not
di posto.
possible to
Yeah,
measure the HRTF
ma dovevi che
of every
mandasti
PlayStation
della
user.
Xbox,
That
come
means
facevi quello
HRTF
routine?
selection and synthesis are going to be big
No, vabbè,
topics
quello è
going forward
famosissimo.
as the
Gliel'hanno
Tempest
quel
technology matures.
Fox
At PlayStation 5
hanno
launch,
invitato
we'll be offering
e
a
ha fatto
choice of 5 HRTFs. There's a simple test
Però
where you
non è
pick the one that gives you the
ingombrante.
best
Cioè è un
locality.
cubo, però non è
That's
ingombrante.
just the first step,
No,
though. This is an
no, vabbè,
open-ended
perché
research topic.
è
Maybe
verticale.
you'll be sending us a
quindi-
photo of your ear, and we'll
L'unica
choose
cosa
a
però,
neural network to
la
pick
parte
the closest
verde
HRTF
non,
in
non
the
si
library.
vede. Cioè
Maybe
non...
you'll be sending us a video of your
La
ears
parte
and your
verde
head,
è
and we'll make a
un'illusione.
3D model of them and synthesize the
Praticamente è
HRTF.
una puttanata.
Maybe
Sono
you'll
dei
play an
bastardi.
audio game to tune your
I
HRTF.
buchi.
We'll be subtly changing it as you
I
play.
buchi che stanno
and
sopra
home in
c'hanno il
on the
contorno
HRTF
verde
that gives you the highest score,
dentro.
meaning that it
Quindi
matches
tu,
you.
in base a come la vedi il
This is
verde.
a journey we'll all be
Ma se la
taking
vedi,
together
per
over the
se la
next
vedi
few years,
dall'alto,
ultimately
tu non lo
we're
vedi
committing
proprio
to
il verde,
enabling
capito?
everyone to
Perché vedi
experience
il
that next
buco.
level of realism.
Poi
Hopefully, I've been able to illustrate a bit about our design and decision-making process today, and why PlayStation 5 has the feature set that it does. Now comes the fun part. We get to
No,
see how the
cazzo
development
spero
community
che
takes
nuovi
advantage
sì.
of that feature set.
aspetta.
I'm hoping for the completely unexpected. Will it come from audio, ray tracing, the capabilities of the SSD, or something else? I guess we'll find out soon enough.
Veramente.
Thank you for your time today.
Tonero.
Se fortuna che non fa vedere l'architettura, di muoverti loro.
Ma che cosa?
Il prezzo di cosi.
Ma l'architettura che
ti
ti
ha parlato,
fare...
veramente. Sì, aveva parlato lui, non ha parlato manco lui.
Finita.
Ma l'architettura dentro il culo loro stava. Muoverti loro.
Cazzo, ti dovremmo processare.
Vabbè, hai un fortissimo debito con noi.
Non sia mai stato.
Però significa che la prossima